Today, I'm answering questions that have come in from viewers asking about the best supplements for menopause fatigue. You may have had some or all of these same questions, so stick around. This is the Let's Talk Toxin Show. I'm Dr. Gayla Gorman, a licensed acupuncturist, naturopath, and author of What's Your Kryptonite? I answer questions and share insights to help reverse the effects of chronic toxic stress. So let's get started. The first question is, could iron deficiency be contributing to my menopause fatigue? And how can I safely incorporate more iron into my diet without overdoing it? So this is really important. You need to understand that iron deficiency is a big problem for menopausal women in particular. Just the accumulating effects of blood loss tend to make us borderline anemic anyway. And so if stress has degraded our digestive system, then we may be having trouble assimilating protein, which eating more iron-rich food will help, but it may back up on you if you have not started dealing with the stress and gotten your hydrochloric acid production in your stomach to be working properly and at normal levels. So there's a lot going on here when we have to consider anemia as a possible issue with menopause fatigue. And so I will answer the question by saying that yes, it is highly likely that iron deficiency is contributing to your menopause fatigue. I always recommend that you incorporate more iron-rich foods like grass-fed beef, for example. You don't need to overdo it. You don't need that much. But one of the ways that I find I can kind of tell if this is my deficiency is that I will just try supplementing with a grass-fed steak. And if I feel better, then I know I was kind of iron deficient. So hopefully that helps. How does vitamin B12 specifically support energy production during menopause? And are there any signs I should look for that might indicate I'm not getting enough of it? B12 turns the foods we eat into usable energy by breaking down the glucose and carbohydrates into ATP. It's a molecule that fuels our cells with energy. So it's not the actual vitamin that gives you energy, but rather it's that the vitamin releases energy for your body to use. So remember what I just said in the previous answer, that if your body is not processing the nutrients that you're giving it, you may need to deal with other issues like digestion first before you worry too much about some of these other things. If this is really an issue for you, then vitamin B12 injections can help you in the short term while you're working to improve your digestion and your nutrient-dense diet. Okay, the next question. Can you explain how omega-3 fatty acids help with mood changes and metabolic health during menopause? And what are the best sources to include in my diet? Well, researchers have suggested that it may be related to their effects on serotonin and the serotonin receptors in the brain. But if you understand anything about serotonin, you know that most serotonin is actually produced in the gut. So do you kind of hear a repeating theme here with the answers to these questions? It all starts with our digestion, and stress is directly related to our digestive process breakdown, essentially. So we've really got to deal with that stress, which is going to have all kinds of positive impacts. But there are some sources of omega-3s, for example, from fish oil, that can produce some improvement in digestive symptoms. And those anti-inflammatory effects will help to soothe your nervous system, help to improve your serotonin production, and that's going to have a cascading positive effect for you. How does magnesium help with these issues, and what form of magnesium supplement is most beneficial for sleep quality? So, magnesium really helps to work with our nervous system, among other things, work with our nervous system to promote the parasympathetic nervous system response. And that is important for rest and digest. Our body does not digest well if it's not in sort of a rested state. So that's why sometimes we have a difficult time sleeping, because our body's still trying to digest, because we've been so stressed all day that that meal we ate at lunch never really got digested. So the best form of magnesium to take is ionic magnesium. It's easier for your body to assimilate, but just know that magnesium in general, it can be very beneficial. And some of the things that I look for to sort of point to a magnesium deficiency is if you're getting muscle cramps, especially during the night, if you find that like your legs are just cramping up, or maybe your feet are cramping up, that's a direct sign that you most likely have some sort of magnesium deficiency. You can even try getting up and taking a dose of magnesium in the middle of the night. And if you fall back asleep within, 20, 30 minutes, then you can pretty much bet that that was the problem. I'm concerned about bone health. How much calcium should I aim for daily? And should I rely on diet, supplements, or both? So, if you read any of the literature, they're going to recommend dairy and juices for calcium intake. And I will encourage you to stay away from dairy. Almost all the people that I work with are sensitive to dairy. And when we get off dairy, all kinds of positive things happen. So we do not want to have to rely on dairy for our calcium. Juice isn't necessarily bad for you, especially if you are drinking something that has been juiced like directly, meaning there's a phytochemical loss that happens after the juice was actually extracted to the time we drink it. So that really needs to happen sometime in the about 30 minutes from the time it was extracted. So if you're not essentially juicing your own oranges, for example, then and drinking it directly, then a lot of those phytochemicals and nutrients have been lost. So juice also has a lot of sugar content. So juice is not my recommendation. These sources of calcium will most likely actually sabotage your other efforts. So you may need to supplement if your nutrient intake with other forms of foods like dark leafy greens and that sort of thing aren't sufficient. Vitamin D and magnesium are also kind of cofactors that help to contribute to bone health and to assimilation of calcium. So I find that most women struggle to maintain adequate levels of magnesium. We talked about that in the last question. So sometimes you can use a CalMag supplement, and I never suggest that you take a supplement long-term forever. If you do find that you need to supplement long-term and forever, you want to rotate the sources of that calcium and magnesium. So you don't want to take the same brand from the exact same source more than for maybe a few months at a time. But you may need that supplementation to help offset and restore any known deficiencies. How do I know if I'm getting enough vitamin D, and what are the best sources? So the absolute most important thing to know about vitamin D is that it is a fat soluble vitamin, and that it is going to backfire on you if you try to get too much of it. fascinatingly enough, if you are absorbing vitamin D from the sun through your skin, your body's pretty smart and it won't let you get too much of it. That's one of the reasons why we sunburn and why we, our body's basically trying to tell us, get out of the sun, you've had enough now, right? So the absolute best way to get vitamin D is with natural sunlight, preferably in the morning. It's going to have all kinds of additional positive benefits. You want to go outside. If you can get outside for 30 minutes to an hour in the morning sun, you've got to expose your skin, and that means including no sunscreen. And that will almost guarantee that you will always maintain adequate levels of vitamin D. If you do find that that's too hard for you, maybe you've got super sensitive skin and so you've got to really watch being in the sun, I would recommend that we find other ways to get vitamin D into your diet without lathering chemicals on your skin all the time. So you want to just make sure that the sources of vitamin D are natural, really high quality. And if you do have to take a supplement, just again, you want to cycle that, not take the same source all the time, and and take a week off here and there so that you're not getting too much vitamin D, which will actually back up and make your liver congested, which then, some of the things that women tend to take vitamin D for are actually a problem because their liver is congested. So just know that you need to look at this from a lot of different angles. And again, the absolute easiest way to get your vitamin D is from the source, and that is the sun. So if you're ready to identify your unique kryptonite, you can find several ways to get the process started at drgala.com/links. So let's keep going here. We've got another question. Are there any interactions or side effects I should be aware of, especially if I'm on other medications? Some of you may have heard that black cohosh or maca root are really good for menopause symptoms. You may have even read that on my website, and that can be true. But it is also true that you could have some side effects and need to be cautious if you're on medication. If you are on any sort of prescription medication, you want to clear that with your prescribing physician before starting any natural supplementation. And yes, I do realize this can be problematic sometimes. They really don't want to deal with it, or you don't feel like they're taking it seriously. If that is the case, then you might want to consult with Captain Google. And then with that information, go back to your prescribing physician and say, Captain Google, Dr. Google says this, and do you agree, and do you think it's a problem, and see how that works for you. But anytime you're on a medication, you do not want to add supplements or herbs without checking for any contraindications or conflicts. How can I adjust my diet to better balance my hormones during menopause? And are there specific foods or nutrients that I should focus on or avoid? So I will say that your diet is the absolute first line of defense, regardless of what's going on with you. So we can all improve our diet. Even those of us who are maybe eating a super restrictive diet, we may not be getting enough nutrients. We may not be eating the right combination of foods. So even if you think diet is not your issue, just pause for a moment and think, is that true? Am I really consuming all the nutrients? Are my meals that I'm consuming all nutrient dense? And I will admit, even though I know how important this is, I sometimes don't get it right either. So we're all a work in progress. But soy products, like one of the things that is just a great snack in the evening is edamame. You can get that organic frozen edamame and just make it, like steam it on the stove, or I have a little oven that I can steam it in. Makes a great snack. The soybeans are really high in phytoestrogens that can really help to offset some of these symptoms of menopause. And so any sort of uh, plant-based foods with phytoestrogens are really helpful. I will also say that super spicy foods, caffeine, anything that's putting a lot of extra stress on your body, it's best to avoid that because we need all the extra energy we can get right now. And when our body's kind of challenged to deal with something, it kind of drops the balls on a bunch of other things and puts out that fire. And we don't want to have too many fires that our body has to put out because we got other stuff we need to be focusing on. Besides supplements and diet, what lifestyle changes would you recommend for managing menopause symptoms more effectively, particularly for improving energy levels and overall well-being? So this is important too. The lifestyle changes primarily relate to prioritizing sleep. So some of us may have bought into the idea that sleep was kind of the last thing on the list at some point as we were becoming that high achieving superwoman in our 20s and 30s. But sleep absolutely has to become the highest priority. And so if you have struggle sleeping, then it becomes even a bigger priority. All the things like sleep hygiene and keeping the bedroom cool and keeping the electronics out of the bedroom and not eating for 3 to 4 hours before you go to sleep, all of those things become really critically important. But then also movement, gentle exercise in particular is super helpful. I recommend walking and yoga and weight resistance training, weightlifting without putting too much stress and strain on your body. All of these things help to promote the production of happy brain chemicals and to relieve stress. And that is going to free up resources, which will improve our energy levels and our overall well-being. So that was the last question for today. And this was the Let's Talk Toxins show. If your question wasn't answered, comment below or visit drgala.com/links. Thanks for tuning in.